Hi everyone, here we are in our React sample project, and we've been using the use effect hook a little bit, and what we've been using it for is to fetch data when the component first renders. Now doing that is what's called a side effect. So we talked about this a little bit in class, but React is based on a lot of functional programming paradigms. And one of those is that your functions should be pure, meaning that they don't have any side effects. So whenever you do something outside of the scope of a component function, then you're supposed to use effect because that's how you deal with what we call side effects. Now, we did talk about side effects a little bit in class. If you want to go over it again, just ask me about it and we'll talk about it in class. In this video, we're going to deal with a side effect, and I want to show you what it is here. Now, you guys know that these React apps are really just a single web page. So it doesn't appear to be a single web page because it looks like I'm going from one page to another by clicking on the links in the navigation. Okay, but what I want you to notice here is that the title never changes, and that's because it's just a single web page. So I'm going to show you the way we can use effect to do a side effect that will allow us to update the title tab based on whatever page or whatever component is being viewed here on our single page web app. Okay, let's go on over to VS Code here, and let's do this in the home page first. So if I look in the pages here, we have our home page. And it doesn't look like we're using the use effect hook in here at all yet. Let me rearrange a few things. All right, so we're gonna want to use the use effect hook. So the first thing I need to do is import it. So here's our imports where we're importing all the various things from the React library. It looks like we're already using use state. I'm gonna add use effect here, like that, and then we can go ahead and use the use effect hook. Okay, now I'm going to scroll down to our component function. It looks like we have this is messy because we've been playing around with it so much, but here's where our component function starts, the home page function. And I guess I'll go ahead and do this right here, the first thing inside the home page function here. So we're going to use the use effect hook. So it starts out by looking like this. So we call the use effect function, and now that takes two parameters. The first parameter is going to be a callback function. So go ahead and put in an arrow function just like that, and then put a comma. And then the second parameter is going to be what we call the dependency array. And now we'll talk more about this a little bit later in class. But if this array is empty, that means that this callback function will be triggered after the first render. So they call it when the component first appears on the screen, they call that it's getting mounted onto the screen. That's the first render. Okay, now what we're supposed to do is any side effects that we want to deal with should happen after the component has returned its JSX. And this has to do with the fact that React functions are supposed to be pure. And we can try to talk about this in class, what that means, but it's real messy in my opinion. But they're trying, the whole reason we have to use effect is because we're trying to keep our component functions pure. And that means that a pure function is one that has no side effects and one that is deterministic. So we'll talk about those in class if you want to, but what we're dealing with right now is no side effects. So this is a way that we can deal with side effects, even though you're not supposed to. But anyway, it's confusing, but this is how we deal with side effects, and that's why the hook is called use effect. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and split apart these curly braces right here so I can put some code in the callback function. And what we want to do is we want to update the title in the browser tab. So the way to do that with JavaScript code is to do it through the document object. So I'm going to take the document object, and it has a property called title, and that's how we can set the title. So I'm going to set it to home page like this. Okay, now you should never touch the DOM or the document object or the window, you should never touch those from a React component unless you're using useEffect. And the reason why is that's a side effect of your component. If you're messing around with the DOM, that's something that's outside of our component, and it's a side effect. So that's why we're using useEffect right here. Okay, if I go ahead and save this, and then go back over to my web page here, and let's see if I reload it here. What did I do wrong? Okay, I have to go to the home page to see that, because that's where we put the code. So I'm going to click on the home page here, and what did I got to refresh maybe. Okay, I don't know. I'm having some issues here, but you can see that once we hit the home page, it did change the title. So I was kind of fumbling around with my refreshes, but it's working. So now for these other components, we're not doing that. So we could use that same bit of code to set the title for the other pages. Okay, so we could go ahead and basically duplicate this code and paste it into all the other page components, and then that would give us the same effect. But what I want to show you is that you can create your own hooks in React if you want, and this is a perfect example for us to do that. So the problem with cutting and pasting this bit of code in all of my page components is that if I decide that I want to change the way it works a little bit, I'd have to go back into all of those page components and then update the code. What we can do is create our own hook, and we can put the code just in that one place, and then we can refer to our custom hook in all the places where we want to use this. Let me show you what this looks like here. Let's create a file inside the source folder. So I'm going to right click and choose new file, and let's call this just custom hooks, just like this. Now this is not a React component that returns JSX, so I'm going to just use camel case. Okay, now, and it's a JS file. Now we're just going to put one custom hook inside of it, but I've seen projects where they put all their custom hooks inside of one file like this. So there's different ways to organize your custom hooks, but we're going to do it this way. All right, before I dig into this code here, I do want to paste this in here for you. I did get this code off of this URL right here, so I probably should give credit. So that's what I'm just going to put as a comment right there to start the file off. And then what we're going to be using in here is we're going to make use of useEffect and useState, so I need to import those. So I'm going to go ahead and import useEffect, comma, useState. The IntelliSense isn't helping me here, so I guess I got to do it myself from React. Okay, hopefully I got that right here. All right, now what we're going to do here is we're going to define a function. So you know that a hook is a function, and if it's a hook function, then the name should start with use. So the name of the function, I'm going to go ahead and declare it as an arrow function. It's going to be called use doc title, because that's what it does. It sets the doc title. And I'm going to set that equal to an arrow function like that. Okay, and now the other thing too is we want to export this. Now there are lots of different ways to export things with ES6 modules, but one way I can do it is just to put the one way is to put the export statement right here, I believe. And then if I do that, does it still, okay, I think that's right. So that's different than my notes, but that should export it. So there's other ways to do the exports too with ES6 modules. We can talk about that in class if you want to ask me about it. Okay, I think this should work. Now what I'm trying to remember is if I remove const, if I put export there, but I think this should work. We'll see. We'll see. Okay. Now this function is going to take a parameter, and it's going to be the title that you want to set the browser tab to. So I'm going to go ahead and add a parameter called title like that. And then what I'm going to do inside this function is I'm going to set up a state variable for the doc title. So right here, I'll go const array equals useState. I've already imported useState. And then what I'm going to do is call the state variable doc title, camel case, and then set doc title. Whoops, I got to spell it right, otherwise it won't work. And now we're going to initialize this variable based on the parameter that they pass into our custom hook function right here. So I'm just going to take that title parameter and pass it in to initialize our doc title state variable. Okay, so we're going to make use of a state variable here, and you'll see how we do that in a second. And then I'm going to use useEffect right here, and this is going to be very similar to what I showed you in the home page right here. So I'm going to go ahead and call useEffect, and then I'm going to pass in the two parameters. The first one is going to be an arrow function. Okay, and then the second one is going to be an array. Let me go ahead, I'll go ahead and split apart the curly braces for our arrow function. And now here, if I leave the, this is what we call the dependencies array. If I leave that empty, that means that our callback function, the first parameter here, is going to get triggered after the first render. So that's what we say when the component mounts. Hang on a second, my phone's ringing. Okay, that was a spam call. Okay, anyways, I think I was talking about the dependencies array here. So if this dependencies array, that's the second parameter that we pass into useEffect, they call it the dependencies array. If that's just an empty array, that means that our callback function here is going to get triggered after the first render, and they call that when the component mounts. That means that you see it on the screen for the first time. It's a little bit strange, but you'll hopefully get used to it the more you work with it. But anyways, that means that our callback just gets triggered once when the component mounts, or on the first render. Okay, now what we want to do is we want this to get triggered every time somebody changes our state variable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add our state variable to the dependencies array. So I'm going to go doc title, and now what that means is when anybody calls this function, the setter function, that's going to change this state variable, and because that's mentioned in our dependencies array, that whenever that changes, it's going to re-trigger our callback function right here. Okay, inside the body of our callback function, we're just going to do what I showed you before. We're going to do document.title equals our state variable, doc title. Okay, so that's it for our useEffect. Okay, let's see here. Okay, and now what we're going to do is what we're going to return from our custom function right here are going to be these two state variables. So that's how people are going to trigger this useEffect right here. If they change the doc title state variable, because it's in the dependencies array down here, it's going to trigger the callback function and update the title on the page. Okay, so what I want to do is return the doc title and the set doc title. So I'm going to go return, and I'll return them as an array like that. And I spelled return wrong. Should be like that. And so here I'm going to return the state variable, doc title, and set doc title. Okay, and that's it for our custom hook here. So I could go ahead and add a whole bunch of more custom hook functions if I want to, and I would have to export each one of them so that they could be used in other files in the project. So we could use this file for many custom hooks if we wanted to. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save my change here, and then let's see how we would make use of this custom hook. So I'm going to go back to the home page. Here's what we had originally. Let's go ahead and just delete this. Okay. And now what we're going to do is we're going to call our custom hook function. And remember that returns the state variable and the setter for it. So here's, I'll put this first thing right where we had the other code. So I'm going to go ahead and do const, and then remember our custom hook returns an array that has the doc title and the set doc title. Okay, and then I'll set it equal to, and then I'm going to call our custom hook function, which is use doc title. Okay, now did it import? I think it imported for me. Okay, let me just check. Okay, good. It imported use doc title right there from our custom hooks module. Okay, so I'm going to scroll back down here, and now I do want to pass in the parameter that's going to set the doc title. So I'll go ahead and set it to homepage, just like this, and I'll just put some exclamation marks so I can see in the browser that if it has the exclamation marks, I know it's using the updated code. Okay, I think we can try this now. I'm going to save. I got my custom hooks file saved. I'm going to save my home page here. Then I'm going to go back over to the browser and see if this worked. Okay, I'm on the books page right now, but if I go to the home page, there we go. You can see that it updated the title bar, and it's using our custom hook. So this would be the code that we would put in all of our other pages, and that makes it a reusable component. Now here, I'm not actually doing anything with the doc title or the setter function for it in here. So I think if I'm not making use of those anywhere in my code, I think I could actually just get rid of them, because all I want to do is set the title once. And now if there was a scenario where maybe something happened in the home page and I wanted to change the title, then I would want to have the setter so that I could change it. Okay, but I'm not doing that anywhere in the home page. So let's see if it still works if I just go like this and call my custom hook without caring about what it returns, because I'm not going to use what it returns. This should also work, I believe. Save that, go back over to the browser, and then I'm just going to go to books and then refresh. Did that work, or is it failing? That's weird. It's just spinning. Okay, I'm not sure. I had to stop and start the app again, and now it seems to be working here. So there you can see the title for the home page. Let's go ahead and just real quick do this for the other pages real quick. So we've got, we'll do it for one other page. We'll do it for the contact page, and then I'll try to make this video a little bit shorter. Okay, so we'll go to the contact page, and we'll go ahead and we'll just go ahead and call use doc title. And luckily it imported it for me, and then I'll just set this to contact page. And now again, I'm ignoring what our hook function returns because I don't plan on changing the doc title inside this component. But if for some reason I wanted to programmatically change the title, then I would take the return value of use doc title. So if that was the case, then I'd set it up like this, const, and then there's my array, and I would go doc title and set doc title. Okay, that would allow me to call the setter for it. Or if I wanted to display the doc title somewhere in my JSX, maybe then I would want the return value too. Okay, I don't need this because I'm not planning on doing anything with the doc title other than just setting it on the first render right here with use doc title. So that should work. Let me save that and then go back over to here, and if I go to the contact page, why did that not work? Okay, I'm looking at the wrong, I got a new browser tab here. Okay, so it is working. Getting confused, but you can see the title changing when I go from the home page to the contact page. Okay, so there's a little bit more information about use effect. It's for dealing with side effects. Anytime you touch the DOM, you should do it through use effect because that's considered a side effect. It's something that's outside of our component function. Okay, kind of strange. And we also learned how to create our own custom hooks. So cool stuff. All right, that's going to do it for this video.